right, it looks like it is setting up, so let's see. We are live. So thank you for joining what we believe is episode 26 of the InnerStrength Empowerment Hour. I am Lori DePietro Standen, and these are my amazing success coaches in my program, Joanne Nagel and Lori Taylor, who we call LT. And we are so happy that you are able to join us today. I have noticed that Zoom has now, on everything I do, I am now closed captioned. So people, for years, I've been trying to figure out how to put closed captioning on things and I can't, and now suddenly here it is. So I'll take it. Enjoy. So today we are going to be talking about how your vibe attracts your tribe. And this is really a lot about boundaries because believe it or not, your weight loss has everything to do with this topic. And so a lot of you have joined this group because you're looking to get healthy and lose weight. And actually the weight is a symptom and the problems are a symptom of other things going on in your life. And that's something that I learned firsthand. For those of you who don't know, I started this program many years ago after I lost 60 pounds and recovered from a chronic illness. And so that was very much a peeling back the layers of the onion, trying to figure out how I got where I was. And a big part of it was the way that I viewed myself, and therefore the type of people that I attracted around me. And now, Joanne has lost about 50 pounds and has been on this same journey of setting boundaries and creating a new vibe. LT, I think we're on close to 80. Am I right about
80?
that?
80 as of today.
Oh my gosh, congratulations. That's
Thank
huge.
you.
And same thing, changing the way you view yourself changes everything, not just your physicality, but how you show up in the world. And so that's what I want to talk about today. And hopefully this will resonate with a lot of you. And I'm looking this way because I'm checking comments on Facebook. So please feel free to pipe in with any questions or comments that you have. So as I was thinking about how to approach this topic, I think all of this starts when we are little, when we're growing up. And when you are between the ages of about 3 and 7, and if you know any kids or you can remember yourself that way, it's very much a fairy tale type of time when you think you might be a superhero or maybe you're a powerful witch or whatever. You really, there aren't any boundaries, and anything that anyone asserts to you is just automatic truth. You don't really question it because you don't have those discernment skills until you get past the age of 7. Okay, so this is just sort of some psychology background to let you guys know how personalities form. And so we start to take on traits about ourselves even when we're really little. So if someone is saying to you, you're lazy, you're fat, you're too much, you're bossy, all of these things, you just take them on as fact because you don't have the opportunity to discern until you get older. And by that time, they're already so ingrained. So that's where I want to start with this is what was your relationship like with yourself when you were growing up for you guys, Joanne and LT?
Go ahead, LT, you go first today.
Okay. I was always a happy kid. I always had friends, always was engaged, very active, always took dance, and then continued on into high school with that. So I didn't have any of those problems or weight type issues when I was younger at all. And I think it was always because I was so active and engaged with things, and really had a lot of friends and really did enjoy life for the most part. College is when the weight started coming back on. So when it first started. And so it just continued after there. And it's just was a 30-year struggle.
Did you feel while you were growing up that, I mean, was your view of yourself tied to how you looked?
A lot of it was, yeah. I always wanted to dress and I always wanted to have my hair and my makeup done and I always wanted to look cute. And I always, that was a big part of it. And my mother always was that way. She was, I can remember her vividly. Before my dad would get home from work, she would redo her makeup and redo her lipstick and all of that. I mean, she wouldn't go to the mailbox without lipstick on. So I mean, it was the type that we always were looking the part. And
Yeah.
I continue to look that part. And we had means, and so I was able to dress and do, and I had all the stuff. And I always was right in line with what everybody else was doing.
So would you say that appearances were really important in your family?
They were everything.
Yeah.
Appearances were everything. And then it did a shift after I turned 10 years old when my household changed after my dad had open heart surgery, and he just became very bitter and angry and mad at the world. And we started walking on eggshells in our house around that time. And that's when I learned about the images and living with a facade.
Yeah.
Because nothing was as it appeared. We were in total chaos and turmoil inside that home from the age of when I was in the 5th grade until I left that house at 18 to go to college. And it was all about appearances, and not only how we looked, but what we were involved in and what we did, and acting the part, doing the part. We were beaver cleaver to the outside, but we were falling apart on the inside.
Right.
And I learned that. I learned that trait.
I think and then, in a different way, I was in the same situation because I grew up in an abusive home. And you are not allowed to tell anyone what's going on at home. So you have to always act like everything is okay, even when it's not okay. And if you try to act like things aren't okay, you have someone telling you, no, things are okay.
Yeah.
You're not right about that. People have it a lot worse than you, so you just need to suck it up and be fine. I think it makes you always question yourself. I grew up not being allowed to trust my own feelings and my own intuition about things. What about you, Joanne?
I grew up very much the same way. I grew up my parents were divorced when I was 4. So I think, that was a very traumatic experience. Even though I probably didn't know it at the time, there was a lot of turmoil, like a lot of drug addiction, alcohol. So everything was like swirling around that. So I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time outside by myself playing. I climbed trees all the time. You could always find me like sitting in a tree, usually playing in the rocks, playing in the mud. So I guess my view of myself then, I liked myself at that point. I connected with nature. I connected with being alone and solitary, and I liked that. But I'm sure all of those messages, like you said, that come between 3 and 7, that was the time all of those things were happening. And I think that's what instilled like that fear. Like I started to develop this sort of fear of being outwardly myself. I just like LT in an opposite way, it was about appearances too. I mean, no matter which way you have it, it's always about the appearances, I think.
And I will say that even though I thrived during that time period, with that turmoil going on, somehow that was still deep in my psyche. And where that came out later is when I had my first child. I went through severe postpartum depression, and I was in denial about it for 2 years. And then I saw a counselor, and the counselor said that it went further all the way back, and I had to redredge all of that up, and it all came. So it was all tied together, and I was in such denial about it. But listen, it affected me in very deep ways, very deep.
Yeah. And I think because it becomes a script that's always running in your head, you just ignore it or you think you're ignoring it. You don't hear it, but it's affecting how you feel and everything that you do.
Mhm.
So, and then you both mentioned, that, or you did, LT, that you first started sort of realizing, or feeling maybe that things weren't great with you in college. With that was
Mm-hmm.
really more, the realization as you got older. I know for me, I remember distinctly, I was 8, that when I realized there's something wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and I knew that I never wanted to, you know, I didn't want to have a household like my parents did.
Mhm.
And now my grandparents were very happily married and they lived next door. That was the kind of relationship that I wanted. But I remember, feeling really kind of becoming self-conscious at 8, not just about my, realizing my own thoughts and feelings, but also being aware of my body. Like,
Mhm.
because that was a very big thing in our household. It was the appearances for us as well. Like nobody's going to the grocery store without makeup on type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But also constant comments about weight all the
Mhm.
time, starting when I was really little like that. So like when I was, I think, let's see, it was either third or fourth grade, my friend got the Lee press on nails and I was just, I
Yes.
have got to have them. And I asked my mom, and I was a completely normal weight kid. I was not overweight at all. I asked my mom, and she said, if you lose 10 pounds, I will get them for you. So at a very young age, that was starting to be a huge part. And at that point, that would have been like, 20% or more of my weight. Like I was a little kid. So I was sort of overwhelmed. Like, how could I possibly accomplish that? I didn't even have a category for it. I think my mom just didn't want me to have the nails. But instead of saying that, she said something crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, what, did either of you have any experiences like that where you suddenly became aware of your body and were like, something isn't right with my relationship with myself or with your relationship in your family?
Yeah, I never had any body shame or there wasn't any, you need to lose weight or any of that going on. Even when I started gaining weight in college, nothing was ever said about it. They may have thought it, but they didn't directly say it to me. But I did start losing the weight pretty soon when I set out to lose it, I did lose it and I stayed down for a while. And it was not until I say I toyed with some weight. It was 20 to 25 pounds. But after I had the children, that's when I got into some serious deep trouble with the weight. That's when it really started coming back on. So, I had about 10 years there where I was just doing that 20 up and down, up and down. So nobody really said anything to me. And nobody, my mother has still never said anything to me when I was at the height of what I was. Now she says it about other people, but she's like, oh, that girl's put on some pounds or, something like that. But she never said it to me. And I don't even think she realized how high I even got because weight to me was so internal. I just processed it for myself. I did not share a lot. I really
Mhm.
didn't. I kept this as a private struggle. It was filled with shame. I
Right.
mean, just shame out the wazoo. And I wrote all of my feelings down in these journals that I've shared with y'all before. And that's where I poured my heart out. Even my closest friends, who I considered my little posse, they're my best inner circle today. They never knew the depth of what I felt because I just did not open up that way.
Right.
Not concerning weight. Other things, yes, but not, it was so private.
Right.
Mhm.
What do you think about that, Joanne?
Well, I guess the very first time that I really felt aware of my body and how I looked or how I felt about how I looked was right about middle school when I'd always been a tomboy. I mean, I was in pinstripe jeans and a baseball t-shirt and carrying my baseball glove every day of the week. And that's what I liked. I liked being dirty and muddy and playing sports and doing these things. And I remember a friend that I met, and her mom was there, and my mom was there, and my aunt was there, was the mutual acquaintance. And when we met her, she looked at me and she looked up and down like, what in hell are you wearing? Like, we're in middle school. You don't dress like that in middle school. And I remember my mom then taking me school clothes shopping, because this was in the summer. And when we went school clothes shopping, I think that comment bothered my mom, or not the comment, but like how that girl was looking at me, and I must have felt bad about it. She took me to this store. I swear to God, it was like the most granny clothes you could ever imagine. It was super Miss Prissy, ruffly pastels, like, and that's where I had to buy my school clothes for the year. I was horrified. Like, that was not me at all. And I can remember then after that point thinking, well, this is what I have to do. This is how I have to look, because this is what my mom wants. This is what my peers want. This is what other people's moms want. I guess this is how 7th grade, 8th grade girls are supposed to look. It was awful. Like, and it was an awful feeling for me to be uncomfortable in that all the time. And to just feel like I really wasn't fitting in anyway, because I hated all that stuff.
Right. But that's what we learn early is, you know, how to fit in.
Yeah.
And it reinforces that thing about appearances. And so if you do have any kind of feelings that you don't think people can relate to, or aren't going to fit in with that facade, then you don't want to share those, because you don't want to not fit in. You don't want people to be looking at you like, oh boy, she's, you know, she's lost it. So especially as a kid, you know, that's just so much pressure. So if you don't have that relief at home where you can be yourself, especially, then that's just where you are all the time. So I think so many of us end up stuffing our feelings down with food. You know, and we don't even realize it. We just feel this anxiety all the time, and we don't even know where it's coming from. I know when I would get home from school, I would immediately go to the kitchen and just binge eat whatever I could find. So, and I never thought about that other than just being like hungry. I didn't have the wherewithal to like process why am I doing that? You know? So what did you have trouble then at some point, or at that point, setting boundaries with other people? So you have this, you know, these appearances happening, right? Like you're presenting an image that isn't really authentic. So what does that do with your boundaries with other people?
I totally did what people wanted me to do. I was a people pleaser to the core. I was always going for the gold star, the atta girl, the recognition, you know, the praise, because when I did good, that made them look good, or mainly my dad look good. And so that was where I got, you know, all of my atta girls, because the house was too rocky anyway, and I wasn't about to rock the boat. So I needed, it was going to tip over. If I did anything, it was going to really tip over. So I really just had to toe the line, and I felt that pressure, but I still thrived in that environment. It's what's funny about it. I still felt a happiness. I was plugged in with friends. I was engaged with school, but it did come back to me. Like I guess I suppressed it so far down, because it did rear its ugly head when I was in my late 20s, you know, all that I went through. Because I mean, I was practically on the floor in that counselor's office. I was an absolute sobbing, heaving mess. And I mean, it took me several years to get over. I was in deep counseling and medication for quite a while, and was even told or suggested not to have a second child. But I was an only child, and I had such a pull to want that second child that I willed myself to get better, to get out of that. And of course I did. And she's, you know, one of the lights of our lives, and we're so glad that we did that. But, you know, that was a scary time during that. And I have to give my husband a lot of credit for hanging in with me, because a lot of men would have looked for the exit door and run for it.
Right.
They really would have. For what I put him through.
It's a really interesting point, that we all handle those things differently. I did not thrive in that environment. I developed an eating disorder. I, would go out and get drunk with my friends every weekend. Like it just, I tried to do things. I was on the cheerleading squad, and then I was on the drill team, and my grades were okay. But I wasn't committed to anything. I wasn't, I didn't know what, I honestly was just I was in survival mode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I think that's the interesting part is different personalities. We all process these things in different ways. And so it's a good thing to realize, because you can have people in your life and kids in your life who seem like they're doing well in certain situations, but are they?
Mm-hmm.
Because when is
Right.
this going to come back?
Right.
What about you, Joe?
I think I have the parallel life of yours, because I did the same thing. I mean, I pushed down that sort of like ruggedy, wanting to be outside in nature, not comb my hair, wear it in pigtails kind of thing, to, oh, let me try out for cheerleading. Let me do all these things to be Miss Popular and to get people to like me. And yeah, going out drinking on the weekends with my friends, like a lot of risky behaviors. Like if I look back at that, and now I have 2 teenage daughters,
I know.
holy crap, I was their age doing this stuff, like driving around with half the football team, drinking in the car. Like,
Right.
What? How does that,
I feel
how
like
am I even alive, honestly?
I am like a cautionary tale to my kids. I'm like, I'm not one of those parents who acts like I didn't do it when I was younger. I'm like, no, let me tell you what's going to happen. So I'm like, here's what happened to me. So I know it's terrifying to think
to look back. I'm like,
yeah.
I just don't even know how I was alive. And the adult me would go, why did you do that? Like, that's not even who you were. Like, where was all that coming from?
But this leads perfectly into the question, how did you view yourself back then?
I was super insecure. I was so insecure, even though it didn't seem like it, because my personality is I'm loud, I'm out there, I'm messy, I'm awkward, I'm whatever. But somehow I turned that to be sort of that class clown, but because I was insecure, not because that's who I was and I embraced it. That's what I put out there, because then people laughed, or people were like, hey, let's go pick her up, this will be fun. Or, like, I think it was just all insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was just the biggest goody that there ever was. And we were talking about this the other night, Joanne and I were. And the thing about it is you can be a goody and that's great, but I was a snobby goody. And I'm embarrassed to admit that I looked down on a lot of people. And because I really was one of those people that thought that I was just a little bit better than everybody else because of the way that I was doing and winning things and grades and all this. And I'm just not like that now. I just can't even stand it. When people show elitism, I am so opposed to that now. It just drives me nuts. So I'm really more accepting of people and where they come from and their stories, because I did have such a crash and burn story with mine. And so, but at that time period, I definitely was just the epitome of a goody. And that's where I got my affirmation. And that's why I did it, because it was all my Atta girls. Everything I got it made me worthy when I got whatever I got, because I wasn't just in the club. I had to be the president of the club. I wasn't just own this. I had to be the captain of this. That was the way it was. Everything I did, everything.
Well, for me, I wasn't going to get the Atta girl no matter what I did. So that was clear. And so for me, I just sort of felt, again, very insecure, not sure what I was doing or what my place was in life, like definitely not fitting in with people that were more, cliquey, like who were doing all the things. I wasn't one of those people. I I was definitely somebody who, did a little more acting out. But the main thing was I just felt like crap about myself.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I picked people. When you feel like crap about yourself, you pick people that feel like crap about you too.
Mm-hmm.
You attract those people.
Yep.
And that is something that I have tried to talk to my kids about a lot, because I wish I would have had more awareness. And in my family, like I said, with my parents, it was a physically abusive home, as well as, verbally abusive. And so I was aware that I didn't ever want to be in a physically abusive relationship. I wasn't,
Mhm.
I was very aware that I didn't want that, but I didn't really think through the rest of it.
Mhm.
As far as the ways that it affected me. And so what happened for me was, in terms of, in terms of my romantic relationships, I picked people who I felt were not as good as me, because I didn't want to be, I settled, if someone liked me, that meant I should like them, because it wasn't about how I felt. It was like, oh, someone likes me. This is important. So I should
Mhm.
like them too. And it wasn't about my feelings and what I wanted and what I liked. And so I settled because of that. And because I didn't have a high opinion of myself, even though, like you said, Joanne, or, no one would ever, I think,
Right.
have guessed that about me.
Mhm.
But, and it happens with your friends as well. Like, you pick people who don't think you're that great, and
Mhm.
you don't even realize that, like, they are sort of putting up with you, and that is because that's what I was having at home. People who just, in a way, kind of look down on me,
Mhm.
um or people that I didn't feel, that I kind of knew in my heart, like, we're with romantic relationships, weren't that wasn't the right person for me. But I was afraid. I was afraid I
Mhm.
was never going to get anybody else, so because I was so insecure, that I just settled. And I think a lot of women do that. Gina says, sorry you all had to go through that. I started dealing with weight and image after I have had kids. So I can she says, Lori and Joanna, I can relate to both of you. So yeah, I think everybody deals with it at different times in their lives,
Mhm.
depending on, uh, you know, when I guess you have the realization.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it's so common for all of us in some way. I think everyone who's watching this can relate to one of us, because
Mhm.
we all have some kind of similar
Mhm.
story where you're growing up not really being yourself, and that just spirals, and it affects your whole life, all of your relationships.
Mhm.
Mhm.
How So we talked about, how do you think you were teaching people to treat you back then?
I definitely was one of these people that signed up for everything. So it was just get her to do it, and I would always do it, and I've always been a generous person. And I think that I was taken advantage of in a lot of those areas, looking back now, so, and that has squelched me at one point, where I just, didn't want to give anybody anything. It got to the point where I'm just forget it. But I've come back around now, and now I pick and choose about who I do and what I do. But that's the beauty of being at this age and being at this part in the program, is that I'm the one driving the bus now. I'm not getting dragged because I think I have
Mhm.
to. And where I saw it the worst that I've ever seen is when I was a young mother, and I was always the room mother, always involved. At the time, my kids were in a small Christian school, and I have never seen more one-upsmanship than when I was in the young. When I'm talking about when they're kindergarten, first and second
I
grade,
know.
that's when I saw the ugliness of women, and
So
it
much
was
competition.
bad.
Mhm.
So much
Yes,
competition. It is.
yes,
Same with me. I was shocked. I was
shocked.
like, these are kids. I was just, it
Yes,
was amazing to me, the competition between women, in the when my kids were in grade school. Like I was
Yes, and the
blowing up.
alienation and the sneers and the talking behind your back and the whispering and the stop talking when you attend. I even got turned into the principal by 3 ladies when my kid was in kindergarten. I was like, well, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I mean, it was ridiculous because it was all a misunderstanding over things. And then they're the ones that got in trouble and they were supposed to come and apologize to me. And of course they never did. And I'm telling you, if they were on that side of the room, I was on this side of the room for the duration of the school. I mean, just could not stand each other. And that was just the way it was. I mean, and I didn't even work with women like that. But when I did work in the workplace, because I was a stay-at-home mom, nobody acted like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
It was crazy to me.
how do you think, I mean, so I know for me, I definitely put off, somehow, not on purpose, obviously, but this thing that people could sort of run over me.
Yeah.
I would not speak up for myself. They could say basically shitty stuff to me, and I wasn't really gonna address
Oh,
it.
no.
And I, so in terms of how I was, and then I would blow up also. So like
Blow up.
I would go along for a long time like that, and then I would completely lose
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, the lid would blow off the pot. That's
Right.
exactly what I did. I was so non-confrontational that even when this happened, I never confronted any of these people at the time. I sat there and did eternal seething. I mean, just raging mad. But I'll tell you who got the shrapnel from that.
That's gonna
My poor
be
husband and the people at home, because they're not going to leave you and they're the ones that love you the most. And that's who you treat the worst. So that was not fair to them. And at the time I had lost a lot of weight. At that time when all that happened, and it wasn't far after that's the time I had lost the most weight. Before I had lost at the time I had lost over 50 pounds. I gained every bit of that back, so this was 13 years ago, and that's when I, if I could freeze back time, I would go to that moment and just shake that girl, because this would not even happen today in the realm of this. If I had problems with that severe with a group of women, I would approach them in a calm, methodical manner and say, do we have a misunderstanding? Is there a problem? Because this is not where I'm coming. I would not sit there and let it rage and boil over to the way that it did. No.
Well, I just want to say that I'm going to have to use hashtag eternal seething
Yes.
in my life from now on, because I
Yes.
love that eternal seething.
I mean, talking about, I got mad when I even pulled in the parking lot and saw their car there, like that they were already there. So it was like, they didn't have a chance. I didn't have a chance. We knew we didn't like each other. And so at this point, they couldn't even walk in the room right, because I had already developed such a hatred to these people. And listen, they hated me too. It went both ways. I was not the only one hating around here.
There is a ridiculous amount of competition.
Yes.
And I definitely was one of those people where people just take one look at me and decide they didn't like me. I didn't even have to say anything. I don't know if it was like resting bitch face, if it was just, they just didn't like the way I looked, like they're just right away. They're like, no.
Yeah.
So I was constantly I felt like I was on the defensive, and I was definitely so, I just felt so self-conscious all the time and so aware and so angry all the time. Like I was always, and I would have this rumination in my head, ruminate about all this stuff that it just never ended.
Never.
It was always this thing going on in my head because I wasn't resolving anything with anybody really.
No. And you'd be just as mad about whatever situation happened. You could get just as mad about it in present day that happened because of ruminating. And I had a counselor tell me that. I remember he sat back and he said, you really ruminate a lot, don't you? And I thought, no, man, I'm on a hamster wheel. That's all I do. Is create scenarios and ruminate.
Angel says, I've been awakened to how much I was allowing myself to settle. I'm now in control of myself and taking a step back. I've not dated in a few years. And for the first time in my life, it feels good to have my boundaries in place. I was the queen of people pleasing, and my goodness, it was exhausting.
Yes.
Yeah. And Gina says, LT, I was always the room mother, the party planner, and the driver to all the sports.
Yes.
And I know, Joanne, you can relate to this as well. Because when I met you, you were doing all the things.
Yes.
Yes.
And she says now she's starting to take care of herself.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So,
well, what happened with me was, in order to combat that, and this is how I dealt with it. Now, the children were the beneficiary, I will say that, but those kids, I amped up. If they thought I was doing stuff, I amped it up times a million. And they had the most fabulous parties, and I did it for spite. And I'm old enough and mature enough to admit that I just made things wonderful, and I spent lots of money doing it. And I will tell you this, those kids benefited, and I'm glad they did, but I did it to get back at those women. And that's being honest right there. That's what I'm not proud of it. I'm not sitting here proud of it, but that's what I did. Yeah. I know. And then I started eating after that and gained all that weight back. So it kind of correlates, doesn't it?
And that's why I don't go to PTA meetings. Because I am staying far out of that room.
That's right. I pick and choose now. Pick and choose.
So what about you, Joanne? How do you feel you were teaching people how to treat you at that point in your life when you were, because I know, we have all, during that time that we're all talking about is when we were all in the process of gaining weight, that it kind of starts, if it hadn't started before that, that's when it starts to really get going. How do you think you were teaching people how to treat you back then?
Well, because I was a people pleaser, I was teaching people that they could just keep doing whatever they were doing. And I was just going to up my efforts next time to make them like me even more. And so keep crapping on me, go ahead. That must be what I like. So, I mean, this could be a whole show by itself if we dove into this one, let me tell you. But I can't tell you the number of events I've planned or dinner parties I've had or birthday parties I've had where my own family, not my immediate family in my house, in-laws, maybe my mother, maybe, but just totally crapped on my whole efforts. And then the next time around, I was like, oh, well, maybe they didn't like how I did that. Maybe I should make 6 courses for dinner instead of 5, or maybe I should cater to them even more. Maybe I should reach out. And it was exhausting.
That's what I did.
Like Angel said,
it's the same thing. We made it more grandiose. That's what we did.
Yes,
we upped the game.
And when tables were turned and my birthday wasn't celebrated, my accomplishments weren't celebrated. And after a while you're like, well, that sucked. Like there, and I never expect things when I do something nice or whatever. I never expect it in return. But from your own family, you should expect a birthday card. You should expect a phone call. You should expect these things. And when I was planning birthdays and cakes and cookouts for everybody else's events, and then nobody would do it for me, I was like, wait a minute. I'm not doing anything wrong. Something's wrong with them. Like, what is going on? But it just really made me feel worse about myself because of being a people pleaser. I thought there was something else I could do that I had been doing wrong all along. So
in my family, I was definitely viewed as the screw up. And, and there was a lot of lying. So I was the black sheep, and anyone who grew up in an abusive home or knows anything about this knows that most families in a really dysfunctional environment, they will pick someone that is the black sheep, not necessarily because of anything this person does, because in my family, we have, really dysfunctional alcoholics and drug addicts and, physical abuse and all these things that are going on. But for some reason, I'm the black sheep and not any of them. So there's so just know that if that is you and your family, it is not your fault. This is just, this is actually a clinical thing that you can look up. This just happens because it unites the rest of the family against you.
Mhm.
And
It
no
does.
one else wants to be the black sheep. And so they don't speak up for you.
Mhm.
So it's a really destructive dynamic, but yeah, nothing was ever, anything that I did was ever good enough. I can remember making a big deal out of people's birthdays and then them saying I didn't, like actually lying and being like, no, you didn't do that. Like I would give them gifts and make cakes and these things. I'll be like, no, you didn't do that. I'd be like, yes, I did. What do you mean? Like, and so that's how they would justify not doing it for me, by actually lying and saying that I didn't do it. So yeah, there's just, when you grow up, no matter, what kind of environment that you're in, the point is that this teaches you how to view yourself. And that's your vibe. That's the vibe that's attracting the tribe. And so when I grew up, I initially picked someone who was abusive, and I was able to get rid of that person, thank God. But I married then someone after that who was verbally abusive, like my mom, who just basically looked down on me all the time, never thought anything I did was good enough, didn't have any real respect for me. So you repeat these patterns, even if they don't look exactly the same. I somehow gathered all this tribe of people in my life who were looking down on me all the time, just like the way that I had grown up. And when you're in that situation, it's really overwhelming because you realize that if I don't have these people, though, I don't have anybody. So that's the hard thing about getting out from under, that those people, is you can reject them and get away from them usually, but then you're by yourself. And so that was what I knew was going to have to happen, because I didn't have anyone at that point, not a single person in my life, not at church, not at home, not friends, nobody who had any kind of real, like, who, held me in any esteem. So I knew that this was just going to be me by myself. And I think that's why a lot of women don't do it. They don't start seeking out new situations and new people, and because they're so afraid of being alone. They're afraid, if I don't go with the crowd, I'm going to be alone. I talked to someone, I do mindset calls with clients, and I talked to someone who recently, who she went out to eat with her friends and she was eating really healthy, and her friends laughed at her and made fun of her at dinner. And are these really your friends? So I mean, maybe they are, and you just need to have a talk with them, but maybe they're really not. And so but that's scary. It's scary to be by yourself. So what do you guys think was the catalyst? I mean, for me, I was very sick and overweight. I looked around me and realized that I had no support whatsoever. And I just thought, I can either keep going along like this, or I can start making some changes. So what was the catalyst for you guys?
For me, I was looking around and I had so many wonderful things going on in my life. I mean, I really did. I've been blessed in many, many ways, and I was absolutely miserable. And I couldn't do it anymore. I just reached a breaking point where I had been up and down for too many years, and I just needed a change. And I found you, and I knew that it was with real food, and I just took a chance on it because I got a different vibe from you from the beginning, and I ran with it, and it's absolutely changed every aspect of my life. Food has just been one issue. Weight is one issue. I have so many. It was always right there. It was tangible. I thought I could get it, but it just slipped out of my hands every time for 30 years. And I tried so many different ways to find it, and I practically bent over backwards to get it. And it always just pass me by. So I finally have gotten to where I've always wanted to be. I'm finally at that place now. And it's a wonderful spot to be in, that I'm at the age that I am, and that I have a husband who stuck through me for all that. And now we can enjoy all of this goodness that's coming our way. And we just really do feel like that it's our time. And I'm very, very happy in a lot of different areas. And I feel we use this word a lot, but I am very empowered because I am choosing the life I want. I'm creating it. I'm creating groups that I want to be in. I'm saying no to a lot of things, and I'm really not feeling guilty about it because I like the life that I have set up now, and I don't want to add to a different dynamic. So, and I do things. I have lots of things that I really enjoy that bring me meaning and purpose. And I'm just not doing all that kind of busy stuff that I used to do before.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're in charge, basically. We talk about being the engine of the train of your life instead of the caboose.
I am, for sure.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Joanne? What do you think that the I guess the catalyst or the final straw, like what happened with you?
Well, I think it was my health too. My health had gotten to such a bad point, and my anxiety had gotten to such a bad point where we used to live. I hated the town. I hated, it just was the city. I just didn't, it wasn't me, and it didn't feel good to me. And I think that took a toll on my health, and it took a toll on my mental health as well. And I didn't like the people I was surrounded with as far as family members, because they all lived there, and it was like everything was about that part of my life. And so I think the big thing was when we moved, I started stripping away all of that stuff. And that was the first time I had actually started listening to what was in here and said, I cannot do this anymore. I am going to end up in a grave if I keep doing this. And we moved. And I said, for the first year that we live here, new school district, and it was far away. It's an hour plus away. So I'm not going to volunteer for anything. I'm not going to even step foot at that school and go to a meeting, nothing for the first whole year. And during that year, I really started thinking about what was happening to me. Like, why was it happening? What were the causes of it? And I started thinking about how to fix it. And that's when I found you, is about a year into us living here. I was like, I have to fix this. I don't know what it is. I don't know how I got here, but I need to fix it. And once I found you and I learned how to set boundaries, and then it felt like I wasn't running away from my problems. I was setting boundaries. And there's a huge difference when you can set a boundary and be confident in that, because you know that that's what you want and that's what you need for your own well-being. It's not just that you're running away from things. I should have ran away from all the things I ran away from in my life. No joke. Like, I should have ran away from a toxic domestic violence situation. I should have ran away from, and I did, but that over the years, I felt like I was the problem because I was the one always leaving. I should have done that a long time ago. I should have set boundaries a long time ago. But, I read something the other day that said, all your bad choices, all your bad thoughts lead you to the right place in the end. And I really think that that's how I ended up here, is all those bad choices and, bad food choices, bad relationship choices. Here I am now, and all the fog is cleared. And now I can actually make my own path the way it was meant to be, and not how everybody else saw it to be, because that's totally off base.
I know. And I will say this about myself that's crazy. I internalized all of these weight problems for so long and beat myself up and berated myself and hidden this shame. So it's not lost on me now that I'm becoming an open book in this platform and have shared things with this group and with this that I never even uttered out loud before.
Right.
So, I just feel such a freedom that I have a safety net, that I feel safe in the group that we are in, that I have said things that I never thought I would tell people. Ever. But yet I do, and I feel cleansed. I really do. It feels good to get it out, and people understand, and there's no judgment. And a lot of people say, I felt that way too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the thing is that's so isolating is we don't realize how much we have in common with other women.
Right.
And it makes us feel like we have to judge other people because we feel like we're being judged. Well, if I'm
Mhm.
being compared to her, then what's wrong with her? Well, here's what's wrong with
Right.
her, because I'm feeling so insecure. And I think when in our group, you get to be a part of something where we are all just so excited for each other to succeed
Yes.
and totally understanding when someone's having a hard time and not
Yeah.
judging them and thinking like, well, I'm not struggling like her. We're actually like, how can I help? So it's being a part of a tribe where we're doing life in a way that we can support one another instead of
Mhm.
judging one another and tearing each other down and competing with one another. There's just none of
No.
that at all.
Mhm.
Mm-mm.
So, what though, since you started this process, because I know we all have these stories where, when you start setting boundaries, it's not easy. I mean, we're like,
No.
yeah, start setting boundaries, but it's hard. If you have not been setting boundaries and you start, it is difficult. Like
Mhm.
it is, I know, the first boundary that I set that, was with my mom. So one of the things that my mom had done, this is just to give you an example of the type of relationship that we had, and I've mentioned this before, is as an adult, she said, at a family function, she asked me to stand up so everyone could see how fat I was getting.
Mm.
And I stood up because I just always did what my mom said. So this is the kind of relationship that we had. So I finally, said to her, listen, I am not going to put up with that type of treatment anymore. And I said it to her very calmly, like, I'm not going to let you treat me like that anymore. And if you feel like you were, like if you start belittling me, what I'm going to do is remove myself from the conversation. I'm just not going to talk to you because I'm not going to engage with you either to argue with you about why I deserve better treatment. I'm just going to stop talking to you. So I'm just telling you now that this is what I expect from now on. And she was shocked. She didn't really argue with me about it. Everything was okay for about a month. Then she started in on me again, saying stuff that was really belittling. And I said, Mom, I told you, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And at that point, we were for that particular conversation, we were on the phone. And I said, I'm hanging up now. When you feel like you can treat me with some respect, then we can talk again. And I hung up. I haven't heard from my mom since then. And that was years ago. My mom does, and so sometimes you set a boundary and the person, first of all, people in your life are always going to test your boundaries. If you say, you have to be prepared to stick to your boundary, but your job is not to decide how they're going to act. You just have to set the boundary and be done with it.
Mhm.
So it's unfortunate that my mom made that choice, that she just decided if I can't control her and belittle her and whatever, I'm just not going to mess with it.
Mhm.
But my life is actually better because I set that boundary. So I know that in different ways, the two of you have had some boundary setting adventures. So what can you tell us about that?
I'd say that I have been such a volunteer the whole time I've been a stay-at-home mom that I've just been on these rotating things where they just assume that you're going to do it the next year. And, there's no question asked. And then you just fall in line and do it. Because when I say I was a volunteer, I was a volunteer. I mean, this was church, this was junior league, this was my neighborhood, I did all kinds of stuff. And it was like in roles where it was leadership roles, where it wasn't just normal stuff. Well, they were coming back around after I'd been on this program. And I said, you know what? You don't need to put me on that again because I'm not going to do it this year. What? You're not, what do you mean? I'm just not, I'm got other things. I'm going in a different direction. Well, who are we going to get to do it? I'm sure you can find somebody. You can probably call, the world's not going to fall off its axis. And they find somebody else. And I found that what the problem is normally those people who are in that position where they're the ones that have to get the volunteers, you just make it a lot easier for them when you're an automatic slot for them. They actually have to think and call somebody else and come up with a plan. You
Right.
make it a little bit harder for them, but that's their job and it's fine. And so I'm not feeling guilty about that at all. And I've picked things that I work with, and There was a few ladies that I would work with. As much as I love my church, there's a few people that I'm not going to work with them. And so instead of tiptoeing around it, when the volunteer called and asked me, I'm like, is so-and-so on that committee? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm not, I'm out. I don't do that. We don't get along that well. She's a nice person, but we just don't work well together. And she said, well, yeah, no, not doing it, but I'll do this and I'll do that. And I have other things. And then I picked myself to do hospice volunteer with my little black dog. And we go, and they had a celebration for us on Monday for their volunteers. And I have never felt more appreciated in my life than when I attended that thing on Monday of this week. And it's not for everybody. It is not for everybody. And I will say that, but I get such purpose and fulfillment out of being with those families. And I know that I'm making a difference. And they tell me that, and right. I feel it, but I'm getting just as much as they're getting out of it. And then they celebrate you and just lavish these gifts on us. And I was like, I don't even know why. And they're like, oh, we just love you. We love you, And I thought, I never get this at other places that I went to. And what does it make me want to do? It makes me want to do even more, because I already loved it anyway. And now I love it even more because you love it. You love me doing it, right. So that's the kind of people I want to be around.
Yeah.
Right. So it's about, instead of letting other people decide,
right,
you listen to your heart. Like, what do I feel like I'm called to do?
Right.
Where do I feel like I can use my gifts? What are my choices?
That's right. And I still do stuff at my church too. It's just I pick and choose what I'm doing. And I enjoy the things I'm involved with right now. I really like. I just let some other things go. I still am involved in my neighborhood, but I don't do a leadership role, but I'm there at stuff, but I'm just not going to be in charge, so and with the school, definitely with her being in high school, parents are a little bit more to the edge than they were in the elementary school, but I still do things, but I pick and choose what I want to do. And I'm appreciated and very well liked at that school. So, I've just set myself up is what I've done. I have cherry picked what I want to do. And I have created a circle of friends and support that I get success. And when I see negativity, it is like hitting me with a cold cup of water. I'm just like, yeah, I don't play like this. I can't stand it. It's so obvious. Whereas before, I would have just let it happen. Just let it happen.
Right. Mm-hmm. What about you, Joanne? Your boundary? The original question was the boundary setting. What boundaries have you set that were difficult? Like, what's been your experience?
Definitely setting the boundaries with school. With myself, setting that boundary with myself, saying, you're not going to do this. You're going to take a year off. You're going to think about what you want to do, and not get wrapped right back up into that whole, like LT said, you're on every list. They call you for everything. It's like, at one time it was a joke that I should have had a t-shirt that said party hero, because like LT, I was the party hero. I could throw a big party. And, so I had to set that boundary with myself and really listen to what I wanted to do. And I've had to set some hard boundaries with family. And that has made a really maybe difficult situation. I don't know, because that boundary is still set and I haven't really had much contact because of COVID. But we'll see how that plays out. But I feel like I'm more confident knowing that I'm not coming at it from a place of anger, knowing that I'm coming at it from a place of protecting my own energy, and that now I actually value that. Whereas before I didn't have, I guess, maybe the self-worth or the self-confidence to say, this is what I want and this is how it's going to look. And I'm going to stick by that consistently. If you want to participate in my life the way my life looks, I would love that. You're welcome to, but I'm not going to participate the way you used to have me participating. That's over. That chapter's closed.
That's exactly right.
If anyone has read Untamed by Glennon Doyle, she talks about this like an island, and you are, you are invited to come to my island if you are there under my rules. But if you are not willing to do that, then you can stay on your island and I'll just talk to you over there. So, I think that, part of, and she says, I don't know the exact quote, maybe one of you guys does, but, part of being a good parent is to stop being under the thumb of your own parents, you
Mhm.
know, so that you can really start thinking for yourself and what your
Yes.
family needs.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, you know, so yeah, these are difficult conversations, but it's worth it. When I
Mhm.
set that boundary with my mom, I felt like I was going to vomit. I
Yeah.
really,
It's
it
scary.
was, was so, and here I was, you know, like 40 something, like, but I did it. And every time now that I have to set a boundary with someone, it gets easier.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah.
you know, it just is because I'm more confident in myself and I'm not afraid of their reaction.
Mhm.
And like you said, Joanne, I don't go into it with anger,
Mhm.
or, you know, I'm not, it's not a negotiation process. I'm just like,
Right.
Right.
here's, you know,
That's
here's,
exactly what it is. Yes,
yeah,
you can do things calm and methodical and in a very kind manner. It doesn't have to be, don't ever call me.
yeah.
It doesn't
I
have to
mean,
be like
it's,
that.
Mhm.
no,
Right.
it definitely, that would be counterproductive because then it does
Yeah,
become an argument, which is not what a boundary is. A
that's
Well, and then
right.
boundary,
you look crazy. You look like
Right.
the thing they always thought you were.
right,
So
exactly,
you
right,
Right.
right. Well, I think so, you know, the really important part to remember when you're setting boundaries, because have had women ask me about this, is like I had a woman say, working two
oh,
jobs
whoops.
and
Oh,
she
there
needed
you
to
go.
take, am I back?
You're
Yeah,
back.
you're back.
Oh, she needed to take some time for herself on Saturdays. And she works two jobs and she really needed that. And she was going to ask her husband if that would work for his schedule. And I was like, well, why do you have to ask him if that works? And she's like, well, you know, then he's home with the kids and he doesn't really, you know, he doesn't really love that, blah, blah, blah. You know, and I was like, so I'm like, so you just need to say, listen, I'm taking Saturday from this time to this time for myself, and here's what I'm going to be doing. It wasn't like a 6 hour thing, you know, it's a couple of hours. And
Mhm.
she said, yeah, but then he's gonna be like, okay, but then you need to do this. I'm like, no, it's not a negotiation process.
No.
No, this isn't him coming back with what, well, here's what I want. I'm like, that's not what that is. So
Mhm.
No,
like you
no.
just say, here's what I'm doing, and then the boundary is set. Because in their situation, and I realize, you know, everybody has different situations. In their situation, that was totally fine. He wasn't, you know, that wasn't going to change his schedule, that nothing, you know, he just basically didn't want to do it. So the point is that you don't have to argue with anyone about your boundaries. And when you put that new vibration out that, listen, I know what I want and I'm important. I respect you, but I respect myself.
Mhm.
Then you attract a different type of person into your
Mhm.
life, different new people, and you attract different reactions from people. Anyone
Mhm.
That's
who, you're going to have people in your life who are like, okay, well, I guess this is
right.
what we're doing now. That's
Yep.
fine, you know, and
Yep.
who will totally respect you. You're also
Right.
going to have people who are like, bye. And that is also totally fine.
It
Yep.
is.
You have to be able to let those people go because they're not, if you taking care of yourself is a problem for them, then
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Right. My husband, as I said before, has 10 million hobbies. He was always gone doing things, and I would just seethe and get mad and,
The
hold it
eternal
over his
seething.
head and punish him, when he got home, in little ways, however ways I wanted to punish him at the time. And now his schedule hasn't changed. He's still doing all of that, but I totally changed. And, now I'm like, bye. And so then when I do need him to do something, I just make it very clear. Now, I need you on Saturday to do, and it's fine. So he's
Right.
always he would have been that way before, but see, I internalized it and I
Yeah.
said, you're always gone. You're always doing what you want to do. Must be nice. I did that for years and we're just not playing that game anymore. But
Well, when
nothing's
you're
changed.
happy,
Well, on his end, I changed.
Mhm.
right, because it's not his job to make you happy.
Right.
And so when you realize, and then I say that, for all of us, like when we realize it's our own job to make ourselves
Right.
happy, that is a different vibration when you don't
Yes.
feel so insecure that you're like, it is your job to make me happy. Because then you can just decide. It doesn't mean, like, for some of us, I ended up getting a divorce during this process because my husband was not like that. He was demeaning. He wasn't supportive of me. And so as I grew in that area, what I realized was this isn't going to work. And he realized it too. He actually said to me at one point, I feel like I don't even know you anymore. And I said, you know what? Same. I don't know me anymore either, because I am becoming me. I am becoming the most me that I can
Right.
be. And this is
Yeah.
not whoever I was before,
Right.
you know? And so it was a good thing. But in my case, that was a relationship that ended, and that was fine. You know, it's
Mhm.
painful. I don't want to act like, I don't want to dismiss
Right.
how
Right.
difficult divorce is, but it was the right thing.
Right. Right.
So that, but you have to be willing, you know, when you're in that situation, you're going to have to walk through some fire to
Yeah.
get to that point where you are in a situation that where you have people around you who understand that your needs are just as important as theirs,
Yeah.
that you are going to sometimes prioritize yourself over them. And that
Mhm.
is okay. As women, that's something that we need to realize is totally okay. Men realize it, and we need to realize it too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they love the dynamic because they love how much easier it is when they come home or when you're with them, because things are easier.
Right.
And there's just not as anxious, not walking on eggshells, as we've said before. And they feel a freedom in that too. And so when you can have that little playfulness and that banter going back and forth, they are so willing to work with you on whatever you want to ask, because they're just been elevated with their mood.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it so clearly now, how I just kept him like wondering, oh my gosh, what is it now? What am I doing?
Well,
You know, I know
right.
I did
It's
it.
more straightforward. You don't have to play games that
Yes,
are like, because you're not depending on him to
that's right.
fill this hole that you needed to fill
Yeah.
yourself.
That's right. It's a
Yeah.
lot
And
of
I just,
pressure I put on him. And that's why I tell him all the time that I'm so glad he hung in there. And, you know, he never was going to leave, but, you know, we were just that tight. We were committed, but we just we've made it so much more pleasant.
yeah.
What we have done, you know.
Well, and in my case, just what I decided was I am going to be 100% myself when, you know, at some point I decided that that was the way that I was going to approach the dating world instead of trying to be something for someone.
Yes.
And that is how I met the love of my life. So,
Right.
you know, which I wasn't expecting at all. I actually had decided I was never going to get married again. I was like,
Yeah.
that's, you know, I'm just going to do my thing. But because of that, I attracted someone to me who really respected me the way that I am.
Sure. And
You
y'all
know,
are a perfect fit, a good match. You complement each other so well, and he absolutely adores you.
right.
He
Yeah.
does.
I mean, you know, that I went from being with somebody who just sort of was so condescending and just looked down on everything I did to someone who thinks the sun rises and sets on me, you know,
That's true.
and who I love and adore. So it's, yeah, I mean, the difference can be really like night and day in your life,
Yes.
with your friendships and even with your kids. I set boundaries with my kids now, you know, like that I didn't know how to do before. When you're setting the tone in your own home. So there's just so many things that it affects when you put out the vibration.
Mhm.
But again, it has to be that vibration, not if you're not doing it out of anger, you know. It's not shoving your needs down other people's throats. It is really just like, here's what I need for myself, and here's what I'm going to do, you know, for y'all. And that's just how it is,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do you feel about yourself? So if we bring it back full circle, how is how you feel about yourself different now than how you felt about yourself a couple of years ago, say?
Yeah, totally easy with myself, kind to myself, loving, you know, confident. All of those thoughts, those ruminations, those times where I would just beat myself up, never could get it right, told myself you're never going to get it right. All that's gone. So now I'm open to all kinds of new possibilities. I see the possibilities as they are. It's like I really have fresh eyes, and it's more of an excitement about what's around the corner instead of a dread. It really is. And I'm so appreciative for it. And it's just such time as this. It's a great time to be alive. That's like all I can say. I'm eternally grateful to you. I really am. I've told you that a million times, and I'll keep telling you that because I just could not get it. And now that I have it, it's better than I even thought.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What about you, Joanne?
For sure. Well, I'm finally at a place where I trust myself, and I trust myself in my decisions. I trust myself in like how my energy is really. I'm not afraid to put my authentic energy out there. I'm not afraid to take up space. I'm not afraid to be awkward. I'm not afraid to be messy. And that's who I am, and that's who I like. And I finally feel like I like myself, and I finally feel like I believe in myself and my abilities and what my dreams are and what my goals are. I finally feel like that has worth. It's been squashed down for so long and been from many different people told. I've learned also to keep my big mouth shut when telling people things. Like sometimes you just need to do things for yourself and not put it out there.
Right.
Because that's the moment when people will start to be critics of you. But I guess before I was doing that, because I didn't trust my own opinion, I wanted other people's opinion.
Right.
Like, well, what do you think if I did this? Or what do you think? Well, it got squashed before it even got started.
Right.
So now I do what I want and I trust it. And it just feels really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Finally.
It feels natural. It feels like it's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a process that what I always tell the women in our group, because what I do, we have a mindset program within the program that we put people through, and I consult with them specifically on mindset. And probably I would say about half of our coaching calls, our group coaching calls, are about mindset as well. And so the women have progressed so much in this area, and their lives are changing, whether it has to do with career or relationships or just their own relationship with their bodies. And it really is a process of not becoming like anything or anyone else but yourself. You are becoming the best version of you, the most you can be. And that is exciting. When you start to just, it's like feeling your oats. You're excited about who you are, and it starts to be in alignment. Everything starts to be in alignment with your relationships and with your body, and how you're feeling and how you're showing up in the world. And so that's exciting. And yeah, and we can have that at this time in our lives, which is, that's the best part, is that many of us didn't really have that for decades. So feeling that way now at this point in our lives is also super, super exciting. So any parting words from you guys?
I would say that if you feel uncomfortable or you feel alone and you feel like that you're the only one that's going through certain things, there's this group, somebody has done, I've probably done it myself, have done everything that you have probably tried to do. And if it just keeps passing you by, latch on to this, because this is the way that you are meant to eat. This is whole food, plant-based, nourishing foods that are healing to you. And it's going to be healing to your body, mind, and spirit. And you're going to have somebody that's going to be with you every step of the way. It's not going to be scary. We're going to be right here showing you what to do and showing you a proven method that works.
Absolutely.
I would just say, in my house, we've been talking a lot about energy, and the energy that you put out there, and the energy that's out there that you need to protect yourself from. And a lot of people, I think, are in a situation where they have bad energy because they're around bad energy. And the difference is, like, when we're in this group, I feel like you might come into it not believing in yourself, but there's such a varied group of women who have been through this process now. And because they believe in themselves, they can show you how to believe in yourself. And that's a game changer. When you're surrounded with people on all sides that believe in themselves and trust themselves, it's a different energy. And when you start to feel what that energy feels like, you just crave it and you want it, and you learn to develop that for yourself.
Right.
And
It's not,
that's what we have. I feel like that's what we have because the women in our
Yes.
group believe in themselves. And that's how you level up. You level up by being around other women who believe in themselves and then show you how to do it. So,
right, because it's not just someone telling you how to do
mhm,
it. It's
mhm.
being around people who are doing it
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
and who not only are doing it, but are like, hey, come on, you can do it too.
Yeah. It's the vibe.
Mhm.
You really feel it. Like when
Yeah.
you're in a call or when you're in our group, you really can feel that energy it's on a different level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would encourage anyone who's listening who wants to level up in their life, not just physically, because that's the reason we all came into this group, right?
Mhm.
But those are symptoms. And so when you really start to not only have a solid plan, like LT was saying about how to eat, we don't count calories, we don't count macros, we don't do any of that stuff. This is just healthy eating. But it works. I've lost 60 pounds. I've kept it up for 16 years. Joanna's lost 50, LT has lost 80. I mean, this is what we're seeing in the group, but it's also addressing these other issues and giving you, as LT has said before, a safe place to land.
Mhm.
When you are going through this stuff, because it is life changing and it's really exciting, but some days are harder than others and you need that support. So
Mhm.
I will drop a link to more information about how the program works here in the comments. If you're interested, then you can reach out because we would love to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us. I think this is a super important topic. I know a lot of people
Mhm.
wanted to hear this today, so I hope that you got a lot out of it. As always, I appreciate Joanne and LT for being so honest and inspiring all of us with their stories. So thank you guys so much and have an amazing weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye.